In the silent expanse beyond the rings of Kalos, where starlight bent like old glass, a human woman named Claire stood alone on the observation deck of the Galactic Archive. She wore a plain blue jumpsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, eyes fixed on the swirling nebula far below. Around her, the air hummed with invisible data streams, carrying the memories of dead worlds and forgotten empires. She was not supposed to be here. Humans were not invited to the archive. They were considered too unstable, too emotional, too young. But the Xanthari had changed their minds. 3 days earlier, a distress signal had crackled through the Alliance network, a rare, raw burst of static and fear. It came from Earth. Not a military plea, not a scientific warning, but a simple message recorded by a schoolteacher in Portland. We are still here. That message, repeated by thousands across the planet during a global blackout caused by a solar storm, had reached the ears of Elder Kor, the oldest Xanthari scholar alive. Intrigued, he had requested a human representative. Not a politician, not a soldier, just one ordinary person. They chose Claire. She worked at a community center, taught kids how to grow food in rooftop gardens, and once fixed a broken water pump with parts from an old washing machine. She had no rank, no fame, just steady hands and a quiet way of listening. Now she waited. The door hissed open. Elder Kor entered, his tall frame draped in silver robes that shimmered like liquid metal. His skin was smooth and black as volcanic glass, his eyes large and golden, unblinking. He moved without sound, as if gravity itself respected his age. "You are smaller than I expected," he said. His voice was calm, deep, and carried no judgment, only observation. Claire smiled faintly. "Most things are when you're used to looking at stars." Kor tilted his head slightly. It was the Xanthari version of surprise. "You speak without fear." "I'm scared," she admitted. "But fear doesn't mean I stop talking." He studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured to a circular platform in the center of the room. "Stand with me," she did. The moment her feet touched the surface, the floor lit up with glowing symbols. Images appeared in the air, cities burning, oceans rising, forests turning to dust. It was Earth's history, compressed into seconds. "Your species has faced extinction 7 times in the last 300 years, Kor said. "War, plague, climate collapse, asteroid near misses. Each time your odds of survival dropped below 1%. And yet you remain." Claire watched the images flicker. She saw her own neighborhood after the floods of 2042. Neighbors passing sandbags hand to hand in the rain. She saw her grandmother's garden still blooming even after the heat waves. "We don't survive because we're strong," she said softly. "We survive because we help each other." Kor blinked slowly. "Help? Your records show intense competition. Resource hoarding. Violence over belief systems. Your own data contradicts you." "Data doesn't show everything," Claire replied. "It doesn't show the nurse who stayed in a burning hospital to carry out patients. It doesn't show the teenager who shared her last meal with a stranger. It doesn't show the millions who plant trees they'll never sit under." Kor was silent. His species had eliminated suffering 10,000 years ago by removing emotion, conflict, and individual desire. They lived in perfect harmony. No one starved. No one fought. No one dreamed. Their civilization was eternal but empty. No new songs had been written in centuries. No child had ever asked, "What if?" "Your chaos is inefficient," he finally said. "Maybe," Claire said, "but it's also full of life." Before Kor could respond, the lights in the chamber dimmed. A low groan echoed through the walls. The holograms flickered and vanished. "The archive core is failing," Kor said, his voice tight for the first time. "A cascade error in the central matrix. If it collapses, all stored knowledge, every language, every invention, every memory of every species will be erased." Claire's heart pounded. "Can't you fix it?" "The repair protocol requires a living mind to interface directly with the core. But our neural patterns are too stable. The system needs emotional variance, fear, hope, grief, joy to recalibrate. We no longer feel those things deeply enough." He looked at her, really looked at her. "You are asking me to plug my brain into a dying supercomputer?" Claire asked. "Yes. And if I fail? Your mind may not survive the feedback. The data storm is overwhelming." Claire swallowed. She thought of her students back home, watering seedlings in milk cartons. She thought of her brother, who rebuilt their street after the riots with his own hands. She thought of the quiet courage of ordinary days. "Show me how," she said. Core led her through winding corridors of polished stone and light. They descended deep into the heart of the archive, where the air grew warm and thick with energy. At the center of a vast chamber floated a sphere of pure light. The core. It pulsed like a heartbeat, but the rhythm was uneven, faltering. Cables hung from the ceiling, tipped with soft, glowing nodes. These will connect to your temples, Core explained. Once linked, you must not resist the data. Let it flow through you. Find the broken threads. Mend them with your intent. How do I do that? Care, he said simply. That is the only instruction. Claire took a deep breath and sat on the platform beneath the core. The nodes touched her skin, cool at first, then warm. She closed her eyes. Instantly, the universe exploded inside her. She saw the birth of galaxies. She felt the last breath of a poet on a world swallowed by fire. She heard the laughter of children on a planet now dust. The weight of 1,000,000 lifetimes crashed into her mind. Pain seared through her skull. Tears streamed down her face. She wanted to scream, to pull away. But she remembered the rooftop garden, the shared bread, the hands that lifted her when she fell. So she didn't fight. Instead, she listened. In the chaos, she found patterns not in logic but in love. A mother's lullaby from a drowned coast. A scientist's final note. Tell them we tried. A farmer singing to his crops under a dying sun. These were not data points. They were heartbeats, and she began to weave them back together. In the real world, Core watched in awe. The core's light steadied. The groaning stopped. Golden threads of energy spiraled outward, reconnecting lost archives, restoring corrupted files. The system was healing, not through calculation but through empathy. Claire's body trembled. Sweat soaked her clothes, but her face was calm, almost peaceful. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time blurred. Finally, the nodes detached on their own. Claire slumped forward, gasping. Core caught her gently. You did it, he whispered. She looked up, exhausted but smiling. I didn't do it alone, I just held space for all those voices. Core helped her stand. As they walked back through the quiet halls, he asked, Why did you risk your life for beings you never knew? Because someone always has to, she said. On Earth, we say that when one falls, 10 rise, when it's not a law. It's a choice. And we keep choosing it. Core stopped walking. He looked at her with something new in his golden eyes. Wonder. Your species. You are not flawed, he said slowly. You are resilient in a way we forgot was possible. Claire shrugged. We're messy. We make mistakes. But we also keep trying to be better. Back on the observation deck, Earth glowed in the distance. A tiny blue dot in an ocean of stars. You called us doomed, Claire said. We were wrong, Core admitted. Extinction is not inevitable for those who refuse to abandon each other. He activated a console. A new file appeared in the archive. Earth. Status. Enduring. As Claire prepared to return home, Core gave her a small crystal. This holds a copy of all human records preserved forever, and a message from the Council. You are no longer observers. You are teachers. Claire tucked the crystal into her pocket. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew one thing for certain. Earth survives not because it is perfect, but because its people, ordinary, flawed and fiercely kind, never stop reaching for each other, even in the dark, and sometimes that is enough to save everything. Weeks passed since Claire returned to Earth. She went back to her small apartment in Denver, back to teaching kids how to grow lettuce in recycled buckets, back to fixing leaky faucets in the community center. No one knew what she had done among the stars, and she never told them. Some things she thought were too big for words, but across the galaxy, everything had changed. On the Xanthari homeworld of Velos, Elder Core stood before the High Council, a circle of 12 ancient scholars who had not altered a single law in over 8,000 years. Their faces were smooth, their voices measured, their decisions absolute, until now. The human model must be studied, Core said, his voice echoing in the marble chamber, not as a curiosity but as a guide. Murmurs rippled through the council. One scholar, Elder Nira, spoke first. They are unstable, emotional. Their history is a storm of contradictions. And yet, Core replied, they endure, while we can't stagnate. He showed them footage from Earth, not of wars or disasters, but of quiet moments. A woman sharing bread with a stranger after a blackout. A group of teenagers building a wind turbine from scrap metal. An old man teaching children to plant seeds in cracked soil. These were not acts of grand strategy. They were small daily choices to care. We removed pain, Core said, but in doing so we removed purpose. For the first time in millennia, the council voted, not unanimously but with enough voices to shift the course of their civilization. They would open a new branch of study, human resilience. And they would send observers not to judge but to learn. Meanwhile, on Earth, strange things began to happen. In a village in Nepal, a broken water pump started working again on its own. In a drought-stricken town in Texas, rain fell for 3 days straight. Gentle, clean rain that filled dry wells. In a refugee camp in Jordan, solar panels appeared overnight, humming softly in the sun. No one claimed credit. No ships were seen. But people whispered, "Someone is watching." Claire noticed it too. One morning, her rooftop garden bloomed with flowers she had never planted. Bright purple blossoms that glowed faintly at dusk. When she touched one, it pulsed with warmth. She smiled. She knew. Then came the signal. It arrived not as a broadcast, but as a soft chime in every phone, every radio, every smart device on the planet. No voice, no image. Just a single tone, pure and calm, repeating every hour. Scientists scrambled. Governments panicked. But children smiled. They said it sounded like a lullaby. Claire knew better. It was a question. The Zenthari were asking, "May we learn from you?" She walked to the edge of the city that night, looking up at the stars. She didn't have a transmitter. She didn't need one. She closed her eyes, placed a hand over her heart, and thought of all the small kindnesses she had ever witnessed. The shared umbrella in the rain, the hand that pulled her up when she fell, the neighbor who left soup on her doorstep when she was sick. She sent that feeling into the dark, and somewhere, far away, a Zenthari child felt it. His name was Vey. He was 7 cycles old, still young by their standards, and had never asked a question before. But that night he turned to his mentor and said, "Why do humans help when there is no reward?" The mentor, an old archivist named Solon, paused. He had no answer. So for the first time in his life he said, "I don't know. Let us find out together." This simple act, admitting uncertainty, sent ripples through Zenthari society. Schools began allowing open-ended questions. Artists, long silent, started sketching again, first with trembling hands, then with growing confidence. A musician played a new melody on an ancient flute and wept when others joined in. Back on Earth, the tone changed. It became softer, warmer. People began leaving notes in public places. "You matter. Keep going. Someone sees you." No one knew who started it. It spread like wildfire. Then the visitors came, not in warships, not with demands. 3 small silver vessels descended gently over the Pacific Ocean. They hovered for hours, silent. Then a single figure stepped out onto the water, barefoot, wearing simple white robes. It was Elder Core. He walked across the waves as if they were solid ground, heading toward the shore near San Francisco. News drones followed, but no weapons were raised. People gathered on the cliffs, not in fear, but in quiet awe. Claire was among them. When Core reached the beach, he stopped. He looked at the crowd, then at Claire. He bowed his head slightly. "We have come to listen," he said. His voice carried without amplification, clear and calm. Not to speak. Not to take. Only to learn how to care again. A little girl stepped forward. She couldn't have been more than 6. She held out a dandelion. Core knelt. He took it gently. "What is this?" "It's a wish flower," she said. "You blow the seeds and your wish comes true." He studied it. Then carefully he blew. The seeds scattered on the wind. "What did you wish for?" the girl asked. "To remember how to hope," he said. Tears filled the girl's eyes. She hugged him. And the great elder of the Zenthari, who had not been touched in centuries, held her close. That moment was broadcast around the world, and something shifted. Nations paused their conflicts. Leaders called truces not out of fear but out of shame. If aliens could learn kindness from humans, maybe humans could too. In the weeks that followed, Zenthari observers lived among Earth's people, not in embassies, but in homes, farms, schools. They ate simple meals. They worked in gardens. They sat with the sick. They learned to cry. One observer, named Lyra, stayed with a family in Kansas after a tornado destroyed their home. She helped rebuild the roof, her long fingers surprisingly strong. At night, she sat with the children and listened to their stories. When one boy asked if she missed her home, she said, "I am home now, because you let me in." Meanwhile, Claire kept teaching. But now, sometimes, a Xanthari would sit quietly in the back of her class watching how she encouraged a shy student or shared her lunch with someone who forgot theirs. They took notes, not in data pads, but in handmade journals. One day, Cor visited her garden. "You never asked for anything in return," he said. "I didn't do it for reward," she replied, pruning a tomato vine. "I did it because it needed doing," he nodded. "On Velos, we believed survival meant perfection, but you taught us that survival means connection." He handed her a small device. A seed, really, made of light and metal. "Plant this where your garden meets the wild," she did. That night, the seed grew into a tree unlike any on Earth. Its leaves shimmered silver, its fruit glowed softly, and its roots pulsed with a gentle warmth. Animals came from miles away to rest beneath it. Sick people reported feeling better just by sitting near it. Scientists studied it. They found it cleaned the air, purified water, and even calmed anxious minds. But they could not explain how. Claire knew. It was a gift. Not of technology, but of trust. As seasons turned, Earth changed. Not overnight, but steadily. People began to look out for each other more. Communities grew stronger. The tone from the sky faded, no longer needed. The Xanthari ships remained, not as occupiers, but as neighbors. And in a quiet classroom in Denver, Claire watched a Xanthari child, Vey, help a human boy tie his shoes. The boy smiled. Vey smiled back. No words were needed because the lesson had been learned. Survival is not about being the strongest, the smartest, or the most advanced. It is about choosing every day to reach out a hand, even when the world is falling apart. And sometimes that simple act is enough to heal not just one world, but many. The stars watched. And for the first time in a long time, they saw something worth remembering. Months had passed since the Xanthari ships first landed on Earth. What began as quiet observation had grown into something deeper, something like friendship. In cities and villages across the planet, humans and Xanthari worked side by side. They rebuilt homes after storms, planted forests in scorched lands, and taught each other songs in languages that once seemed impossible to share. The silver tree in Claire's garden now stood tall, its branches stretching over rooftops, its light a soft beacon in the night. But not all was peaceful. Far from the shared gardens and open classrooms, fear still lived. In the shadows of old governments and broken systems, some saw the Xanthari not as teachers, but as threats. Whispers spread, "They are changing us. They are erasing who we are. They will take over." In a hidden bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, a group called the True Earth Alliance gathered. They wore old military uniforms and spoke of purity, of human independence. Their leader, a man named Garrett, had once been a general. Now he saw kindness as weakness. "They make us soft," he told his followers. "While we share bread, they study our weaknesses. While we sing, they map our defenses. We must act before it's too late." His plan was simple. Destroy the Xanthari ships. Cut off contact. Return to the old ways of walls, not bridges. Meanwhile, Claire sensed the shift. The air felt heavier in some places. Strangers avoided Xanthari in the streets. Graffiti appeared on walls. "Go home and Earth for humans." She tried to speak at town meetings, to remind people of what they'd gained. Clean water in dry regions, healing fields for the sick, children who now dreamed in 2 languages, but fear was louder than reason. One evening, as she watered the silver tree, Elder Cor appeared beside her. "They are afraid of what they do not understand," he said. "I know," Claire replied, "but fear doesn't have to win." Cor looked at the sky. "On Velos, we once feared emotion. We locked it away, thinking it would protect us. Instead, it made us hollow. Perhaps your people must learn this lesson too. But I hope they do not need 10,000 years to learn it." The next morning, news broke. A Xanthari observer in Oregon had been attacked. Not killed. Xanthari healed quickly, but hurt. The observer, a young scholar named Tael, had been helping rebuild a school when stones were thrown. He did not fight back. He simply stood, arms open, and said, "I am here to learn how to care." The image of him, bruised but calm, spread across the world. In Denver, Claire gathered neighbors in the community center. Among them was Vey, the Xanthari child who now spoke English with a soft accent and loved drawing pictures of cats. "We can't let fear decide who we are," Claire said. "They hurt Tael because he was different. But difference isn't danger. It's a chance to grow." A woman named Maria stood up. What do we do? We show them, Claire said. Not with anger, with more kindness. So they planned a walk. Not a protest, not a march, but a quiet journey. Humans and Zenthari, hand in hand, walking from Denver to Boulder. They would carry seeds, not signs. They would plant them along the way in every town they passed. Cor agreed to join. So did Vey. So did dozens of others. But Garrett heard of the walk. They're making a show of unity, he snarled to his followers. We'll give them a real show. On the morning of the walk, the sky was clear. Claire wore her old blue jacket. Vey held a small bag of glowing seeds. Cor walked beside them, calm as always. As they reached the edge of the city, a line of armed men blocked the road. Garrett stood in front, rifle slung over his shoulder. Turn back, he said. This is human land. Claire stepped forward alone. No land belongs to one kind of person, she said. Earth belongs to everyone who cares for it. Garrett laughed. You've been brainwashed by those aliens. You don't even sound human anymore. I sound like someone who's seen what's possible, she replied. We don't have to live in fear. We never did, he raised his hand. His men aimed their weapons. But then something unexpected happened. From the hills above, people appeared. Hundreds of them. Farmers, teachers, nurses, kids. They carried shovels, watering cans, baskets of food. They had heard about the walk. They had come to join. Garrett's men hesitated. These weren't soldiers. They were neighbors. One young soldier lowered his gun. My sister's sick, he said quietly. A Zenthari healer helped her last week. She's walking now. Another said, they fixed our well. We have clean water for the first time in years. Garrett shouted, don't listen to them. It's a trick. But the crowd kept coming. Not with anger, but with open hands. Claire walked toward Garrett. He raised his rifle, but his hands shook. You're scared, she said gently. I get that. Change is scary, but you don't have to destroy what you don't understand. You can learn. She held out a seed from her pocket, the kind that glowed faintly in the dark. Plant this, she said. See what grows. For a long moment, Garrett stared at her. Then slowly, he took the seed. He didn't speak. He just turned and walked away, his men following in silence. The walk continued. In every town, they planted seeds, and where they planted, green things grew, fast, strong, and bright. The plants cleaned the soil, cooled the air, and bloomed with flowers that hummed softly at dawn. Weeks later, in a small village in Montana, Garrett was seen kneeling in a field. He was planting seeds, human ones and Zenthari ones, side by side. A local farmer watched from a distance, then walked over and handed him a trowel. No words were spoken. None were needed. Back in Denver, Claire sat under the silver tree with Cor and Vey. Do you think it will last? She asked. Nothing lasts forever, Cor said. But what matters is what we build while we can. Vey looked up. On Velos, we used to say forever is safe, but now I think maybe safe is boring. Maybe life is supposed to be messy. Claire laughed. Welcome to being human. That night, a new signal pulsed through the stars. Not from Earth, but from dozens of worlds. Other species, hearing of the human-Zenthari bond, began reaching out. A desert planet asked for seeds. An ocean world sent songs of gratitude. Even old enemies of the Zenthari requested observers. Earth was no longer just a survivor. It had become a teacher. And Claire, still just a woman with dirt under her nails and a love for growing things, kept tending her garden. She didn't seek fame. She didn't want power. She only wanted to show that kindness is not weakness. It is the strongest force in the universe. One evening, as the sun set, Vey asked, "What happens when I grow up?" "You'll keep learning," Claire said, "and you'll teach others what you've learned, even if they're afraid." Especially then. Far above, the Zenthari ships glowed softly in orbit, not as guardians but as partners. And in the quiet hum of the silver tree, the wind carried a new sound. Not a tone, not a signal, but laughter. Human and Zenthari, young and old, planting hope in broken ground. Because survival was never about being alone. It was about choosing, again and again, to stand together, even when the world tries to pull you apart. And in that choice, a new future grew. Years had passed since the first Zenthari ship landed on Earth. What began as a quiet exchange had grown into a shared life. Cities now had gardens that glowed at night. Schools taught in both human and Zenthari languages, and children played games that mixed Earth songs with starlight rhythms. The silver tree in Denver had spread its seeds across continents, and wherever they took root, the land healed. Claire was older now. Her hair was streaked with gray, her hands rough from years of planting and building. She still lived in the same apartment, though the community center had grown into a learning hub where humans and Xanthari taught each other everything, from cooking to star navigation. She no longer thought of herself as special. She was just Claire, a gardener, a listener, a friend. But the universe had not forgotten her. One evening, as she sat on her balcony watching fireflies dance around the silver leaves, a soft chime filled the air. Not the old signal from years ago, but something new, gentler, deeper. It came not from the sky, but from the earth itself. The ground trembled slightly, not with violence, but with breath. Kor appeared at her door moments later. His silver robes were simpler now, worn at the edges from years of walking among humans. His golden eyes held a quiet urgency. "It has begun," he said. "What has?" "The convergence." He explained that across the galaxy, worlds touched by Earth's example were changing. Species once locked in war now shared resources. Planets once dying now bloomed with hybrid life. And deep in the fabric of space, something ancient was waking. Not a threat, but a presence. The first archive, older than the Xanthari, older than stars, was stirring. It had watched civilizations rise and fall for eons, and now for the first time it had chosen to speak. "It wants to meet the ones who taught the galaxy how to care," Kor said. "You mean us?" Claire asked. "Not just you. All of you, Earth, but there was a problem. The convergence could not be reached by ships or signals. It existed in a place between time and feeling, a realm shaped by collective hope. Only those who truly understood connection could enter, and Earth had to send a voice. Not a leader, not a warrior, not a scientist, a witness. They chose Claire again. This time, she did not go alone. Vale, once a child, now a young scholar, stood beside her. So did Maria, the woman who had once feared the Xanthari but now ran a healing garden in New Mexico, and Garrett, the former general, now a quiet farmer who grew food for half the county. They were joined by a fisherman from Indonesia, a weaver from Peru, a teacher from Nairobi, and a musician from Ireland. 12 people. One from each continent, all ordinary, all changed by kindness. They gathered in a field beneath the oldest silver tree, its roots deep in the heart of North America. Kor placed a small crystal in the center of the circle, a shard from the original archive core. "Hold hands," he said. "Close your eyes. And remember why you care." They did. Claire thought of her first garden, built from trash bins and hope. Maria remembered her daughter's laugh after the Xanthari healed her fever. Garrett saw the faces of the men he once commanded, now working side by side with beings he once called enemies. The fisherman recalled sharing his last fish with a stranded traveler. The weaver pictured her tapestries now woven with threads that glowed like starlight. As they remembered, the ground softened, the air shimmered, and the world around them dissolved into light. They stood not in a field, but in a vast, quiet space, neither dark nor bright, but full of presence. Before them floated a shape made of memory and starlight. It had no face, no voice, yet it spoke directly into their minds. "You are the anomaly," it said. "You should have fallen. You should have burned. Yet you chose to rise, not through power, but through care." Claire stepped forward. "We didn't choose it alone. We learned from each other, and from those who came after us." The presence pulsed gently. "Your way is fragile. One act of cruelty can undo 100 acts of kindness." "Yes," Claire said, "but one act of kindness can also undo 100 acts of fear." Silence followed. Then the presence shifted. It showed them visions not of the past, but of what could be. Worlds where humans and Xanthari built floating cities over oceans, planets where children sang in 3 languages, galaxies where war was a forgotten word, replaced by festivals of shared stories. "This future is possible," the presence said, "but only if you keep choosing each other." Then it offered a gift, not a weapon, not a machine, but a seed, larger than any before, pulsing with soft gold light. "Plant this where all paths meet," it said, "and let it remind you you are never alone." The vision faded. They stood once more in the field, dawn breaking over the hills. In Claire's hands was the seed. They returned to Denver, where people waited, not in crowds but in quiet groups, holding candles and seeds of their own. No one asked what happened. They could see it in the traveler's eyes. Peace, purpose, promise. They chose the center of the city, the old plaza once used for protests and parades. Now it would be a garden for the whole galaxy. Together, humans and Zenthari dug the earth. Children placed stones in a circle. Elders sang songs in languages old and new. Claire knelt and planted the golden seed. As soon as it touched the soil, roots spread, not just downward but outward, connecting to every silver tree on earth. Light rose from the ground, weaving through streets, over rivers, into mountains. The entire planet hummed with a single, steady rhythm, the heartbeat of a world that had learned to love itself. In the days that followed, changes came quietly. Sick people dreamed of healing and woke well. Broken machines fixed themselves with no explanation. Strangers hugged without shame. And in the night sky, new stars appeared, not born of gas and fire, but of hope given form. Kor stood with Claire on the balcony once more. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she corrected. "All of us," he smiled, a rare, full expression that softened his ancient face. "On Velos, we used to measure time in cycles of order. Now we measure it in moments of connection. A child's first question, a shared meal, a hand held in the dark." Claire looked out at the city below. Lights glowed in windows. Music drifted on the breeze. In a nearby yard, Vale taught a group of kids how to braid human and Zenthari friendship bands. "Do you think they'll remember?" she asked. "When we're gone?" "They won't need to remember," Kor said, "because they'll be living it." Years later, when Claire passed quietly in her sleep with her hand resting on a sprout from the golden tree, the whole world paused. Not in mourning, but in gratitude. Zenthari ships dimmed their lights, cities fell silent for 1 hour, and in every garden a new flower bloomed, white petals with golden centers shaped like open hands. Her name was not carved in stone. It was whispered in lullabies written in seed packets, sung in the wind through silver leaves and far beyond Earth, in corners of the galaxy once cold and empty. New voices began to say, "Tell us about the humans. Tell us how they taught the stars to care." Because Earth did not survive by being the strongest. It survived by being kind. And in a universe full of power, that was the rarest miracle of all. Decades had passed since Claire's passing, but her presence lingered, not as a legend, but as a rhythm in daily life. Children learned to plant seeds before they learned to count. Neighbors shared meals without being asked. When someone fell, 10 hands reached down. Earth had not become perfect, but it had become kinder, and that made all the difference. The golden tree in the center of Denver now stood taller than any building, its branches stretching into the clouds, its roots touching every continent through a network of living light. It was not worshipped. It was tended. Every morning people came with water, songs, and stories. The tree listened. And sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, it would shimmer in response. On Velos, the Zenthari had changed beyond recognition. Their cities, once silent and sterile, now echoed with music, laughter, and the sound of children asking why. Schools taught not just facts but feelings. Elders told stories of the time before kindness, and the young could not imagine such a world. But peace, even hard-won peace, is never final. Deep in the outer rim of the galaxy, far from the light of shared stars, a species known as the Krell stirred. They had watched Earth's rise with cold eyes. To them, compassion was a flaw. Unity was weakness. They believed strength came from control, from purity, from the elimination of all that was soft or uncertain. The Krell had no faces, only smooth, armored shells and minds wired for conquest. They consumed worlds not for resources but for silence. They erased cultures, languages, memories. They called it cleansing. And now they turned their gaze toward Earth. Their first strike was not with weapons, but with whispers, through hidden channels. They sent messages disguised as truth. Earth's peace is fake. The Zenthari are using you. Your kindness is a cage. They targeted old wounds, past wars, betrayals, losses, and twisted them into fear. In some places, it worked. Old doubts returned. Fences went up. Suspicions spread like frost. In a remote village in Siberia, a Zenthari healer was turned away from a sick child. In a coastal town in Chile, a human Zenthari school was vandalized. In the data streams of the global net, hate bloomed in corners long thought healed. Vale, now an elder himself, felt the shift. He stood beneath the golden tree and placed his hand on its trunk. "They are coming," he said softly. Maria, her hair white but her spirit bright, joined him. They don't understand, she said. You can't fight fear with force. You have to meet it with truth. But the Krell did not believe in truth, only in domination. Their fleet arrived without warning, 100 black ships sharp as knives cutting through the sky above the Pacific. They did not land. They hovered, and from them a voice boomed across every screen, every speaker, every mind linked to the net. Earth, it said, toneless and cold. You have been infected by emotion. You are no longer fit to exist. Surrender your connections. Erase your bonds. Or be cleansed. Panic rose. Some called for weapons. Others hid. But in Denver, a small group gathered under the golden tree. Among them was Luna, Claire's granddaughter. She was 22, with her grandmother's steady eyes and calloused hands. She worked in the seed library, preserving stories in the language of plants. She had never known Claire, but she knew her way. Through soil, through silence, through care. They think kindness is weakness, Luna said. So we show them its strength. How? Asked a young fisherman from Alaska. Not by fighting, Luna replied. By inviting. The plan was simple and dangerous. They would send no army. No threats. Only an open door. Using the Golden Tree's network, they broadcast a single message across all channels in every language, human and alien alike. Come. Eat with us. Tell us your pain. We will not harm you. The Krell ships went silent. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th night, a single pod detached from the largest ship. It descended slowly, landing in the field beside the Golden Tree. A Krell emerged. It stood 7 feet tall, armored in black carapace, faceless, voiceless. It did not speak. It only watched. Luna walked forward alone. She carried no weapon. Only a bowl of soup, made from earth vegetables, Xanthari herbs, and mountain water. She placed it on the ground before the Krell. You must be hungry, she said. The Krell did not move. She sat cross-legged a few feet away. My grandmother used to say, hunger makes monsters of us all, but a shared meal makes us human. You don't have to be human, but you don't have to be a monster either. Silence. Then slowly a limb extended from the Krell's shell. It dipped into the soup. Tasted. A shudder ran through its frame. For the first time in its life, it felt something, not pain, not command, but warmth that made a sound, low, broken, almost like a sob. Luna did not flinch. It's okay to feel, she said gently. You're safe here. Over the next week, more Krell came. Not as soldiers, but as seekers. They sat in circles with humans and Xanthari. They learned to hold seeds, to listen, to cry. One Krell, who called itself First Feeler, spoke through a translator device. We were taught that emotion is error. That connection is code corruption. But this does not feel like error. It feels like waking up. The fleet above began to dim its weapons. Vale stood with Luna one evening, watching Krell children, newly born with softer shells, play tag with human kids. Your grandmother would be proud, he said. She'd say we're just doing what needs doing. Luna replied with a smile. The Krell commander, once the coldest of them all, stood before the golden tree. It removed its outer shell, a sacred act among its kind, and revealed a body trembling with new nerves, new feelings. We came to erase you, it said. But you have given us back ourselves. In the end, the Krell did not leave. They stayed. Not as conquerors, but as students. They built homes beside rivers. They learned to garden. They wrote their first poem, I Was Stone. Now I Am Soil. And Earth, once seen as doomed, became a sanctuary for all who had forgotten how to feel. Years later, Luna stood where Claire once stood, on the balcony overlooking the city. The golden tree's light touched every window. Music drifted from open doors. In the distance, a Krell elder taught Xanthari children how to weave armor into blankets. A small girl tugged Luna's sleeve. Will the stars always listen? She asked. Luna knelt. Only if we keep speaking kindly. The girl nodded and ran off, clutching a seed. Luna looked up at the sky, now filled with ships of many kinds. Not warships, but arcs of hope carrying beings who had heard the story of Earth and wanted to learn how to care, because the greatest power was never in weapons, or speed or knowledge. It was in the choice to reach out a hand, even to those who once meant harm. And as long as that choice was made again and again, Earth would not just survive, it would shine.